I wonder if your feelings on this matter are clear, Lord Vader.
They are clear, my master.
Then you must go to the Centauri moon and wait for him.
He will come to me?
I have foreseen it. His compassion for you will be his undoing. He will come to you, and then you will bring him before me.
As you wish.
Greetings, Bucketheads! Mavar Tigar. Welcome to another deliriously drawn episode of Mando Vision. Nargai Tom, and thank you so much for checking out this small independent Star Wars podcast. Remember, the best way to reach out to us is, of course, on social media. We're at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show at mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, and share the show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. How is everyone doing? Welcome back to another bonus episode. We continue our May the 4th coverage. Yeah, we're drawing it out a little bit, but, you know, it's kind of our month. It's the month of Star Wars, and we're just going to lean into that. Why not? Let's just take it over. Take it all the way over. So we're here. We're still talking about Star Wars Visions Volume 2. We'll be talking about episodes 4 through 6, and some very interesting episodes in here. We continue our tour around the globe of the various animation studios around the world, providing their unique visions for Star Wars. And yeah, some interesting ones in this one. I know in the first installment, I wasn't super familiar with the studios involved in those first 3 episodes, and that had more to do with me not being like super plugged into animation stuff right now. But these 3 studios that we have in this installment, 2 of them I'm a little bit more familiar with, so that was exciting. I was like, wait, I recognize that. So that was sort of fun for me to discover, I guess is the word I want to go with there. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and dive into that. I did want to say, or kind of share one little tidbit. Since our first installment, between here, this one and that one, I went to the movies. I saw a movie, and it was glorious, and I thought I'd tell you all about it. Well, not all about it. I just thought I'd tell you. Go see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's really good. It's a lot of fun. There's a ton of stuff in it. It's got, you know, the action, the emotion, all the heart, all the guns, all the things. It's all the things that you could possibly want for the conclusion of the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy, you know, you can't compare Guardians of the Galaxy to Star Wars necessarily. They don't, they're not apples and apples, but it's a lot of fun, like you're in a Star Wars movie. So go check it out. There is a little tiny bit of Star Wars news out there. I didn't talk about it on our previous episode, and it's probably for the best because it's sort of there's been a development since we would have initially talked about it. But I'm sure we've all heard that the Writers Guild of America is on strike, and rightly so. It's time that these fine people get compensated more fairly for what's the changing entertainment landscape out there. You know, I don't want to go into the depths of it all, but I support the writer's strike 100%. I think these studios are taking advantage of them. and hey, they should be compensated. Their work is vital to us enjoying our entertainment. How does this pertain to Star Wars? Well, we all know that Andor Season 2 is in production. Tony Gilroy, a very talented writer of things and of Season 1 of Andor, played a crucial part in guiding that ship on a story direction. He wrote a bunch of the episodes, and he steered it in the proper course to make it the show that it was. Initially, he was like, "Oh yeah, no, the scripts are done, locked. I'll just be the producer on Season 2 of Andor, and we'll move ahead." Well, I wonder if, I guess after that statement came out, he was sort of attacked by many peers in the industry, and now he's decided that he will fully remove himself from Season 2 production of Andor while they proceed with the show during the strike. Andor is one of several shows that didn't halt production when the writers' strike started. I believe the other two shows were other massive big tentpole IPs as well, like Game of Thrones, the House of the Dragon show on HBO, and the Amazon Lord of the Rings, Power of the Rings series, and Andor. Those are like the three top, productions that are still going on despite the writer's strike. So Gilroy was going. His initial intent was to stay on board and just be the producer, right? I can, he's like, I can produce. Well, you're also still a member of the Writers Guild, and I guess ultimately he decided that to show his full support for the Writers Guild, he would step back fully from production on Andor. Will that lead to any diminishing returns? I don't know. It sounds like Andor had its scripts like fairly locked, but having a presence like Tony Gilroy on the set to kind of make last-minute adjustments or tweaks or dialogue runs or any of those little things, maybe there is an impact. Maybe there is going to be a consequence for Disney pushing through this production despite not having the brains behind the show on set. So we will have to take a wait-and-see approach to it. Obviously, with the show still maintaining its production schedule, the idea is that we'll get the show later this summer. Not this summer, excuse me, next summer. My goodness, that would have been a crazy turnaround, right? But we'll have to wait and see. There's plenty of evidence out there of shows that have suffered horribly during when they try to continue production during writers' strikes, during labor issues. And again, you can go onto the internet and find those various things out, and it's not good. It's a bad track record. A lot of films, a lot of TV shows get impacted when these things happen. And the productions that dare to move forward without having their writers on set, there is usually not good consequences. We'll just put it that way. And so, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. It'd be nice if this was resolved quickly so that Tony Gilroy and other the creatives can get back to their shows and movies and things like that. But I don't know how quick it will go. The last one lasted, I think, 2-3 months. So who's to say how long this one will last? But I hope it's resolved. I hope it's in the writers' favor. I hope they get what they want because they earned it. It's probably the best way I'm going to say it. And these studios are reaping the rewards of their hard work and labor. So until they're fairly compensated, Tony Gilroy is stepping back from Andor, and we'll wait and see if there's any ramifications of that in a year or so. All right. So let's go ahead. We'll get off that sort of negative tip and get into the show proper. Let's talk about Star Wars Visions Volume 2, Episodes 4-6. It is time. Strap on your buckets. Let's go.
I would like to see the baby.
All right, first up is I Am Your Mother. Original air date May 4th, 2023. This is from Studio Aardman in the United Kingdom. Again, animation that I recognize. This is the same studio that did Wallace and Gromit. They did Chicken Run. They have a very unique, distinct style that's very recognizable, very enjoyable, and they do just like really great story stuff, really great emotion stuff. And they use like this really great stop motion animation, and it looks beautiful. The way they did this episode is gorgeous. I was so delighted watching this episode. And I shouldn't even. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's back it up for a second. All right. This is written and directed by Magdalena Osinka. Our plot for this episode: Young pilot Annie, who is embarrassed by her sweet but clingy mom, must team with her for a madcap family race at the academy. Along the way, their relationship is tested by the elements, their old ship, other races, and each other. Our primary voice cast for this episode, we have Maxine Peake, Charithra Shrendon, I hope I said your name correctly, I'm so sorry, Daisy Haggard, BB Cave, and Dennis Lawson. That's right, Wedge Antilles returns to be Wedge Antilles, and in a very a funny comedic take on Wedge Antilles, if I do say so myself. So this episode is delightful. It is sweet and charming and funny and wistful, but it's still, it's got all those Star Wars elements we want. It has Wookiees and it has Twi'leks and it has racing and starships and apparently several people have told me, but I didn't see these with my own eyes, but they've told me that the Mantis from Jedi Survivor is in the episode. And that's what they told me. There's a cameo from a Wallace and Gromit character as well. I am not super well versed on Wallace and Gromit, so I can't speak to that. But if you are a fan, maybe you could look for those little Easter eggs for yourself. But I was just really charmed by this episode. I thought it's a sweet story of a mother and a daughter who, the mother seems overbearing, and the daughter resists and pushes back and doesn't want to include her because she finds her mom embarrassing. It's sort of a very familiar tale. But you get that in a Star Wars story, and it's a lot of fun. I don't really know what else I can say about this episode because it's just sweet and charming. It's just an easy watch. It's fun, and the race is hilarious. And they have a droid who's he looks like an astromech droid, but he also looks like a slinky dog, like a la Toy Story, like the Dachshund Slinky dog. Looks kind of like that. So people who know me know I love dachshunds. So that hit me in a good spot, and I really enjoyed seeing that. It was a lot of fun. And just, I don't know, everything about this one is just enjoyable. It's just a fun episode. It's not heavy. It's not reliant on, in-depth knowledge of anything Star Wars. It's just a super relatable, super understandable story, beautifully rendered with the studio's work here. And I looked at its rating on IMDb before I did this episode, and I think it is horribly underrated by the users of IMDb. This is a really good episode. It's fun. It's not here to give you. I guess this just goes back to what we've talked about in the past. For a lot of people, Star Wars is one thing. Star Wars is one thing and only one thing. And I subscribe to the theory that Star Wars can be all the things to everyone. And this is one of those elements, right? If your idea of Star Wars is sort of narrow and focused on laser swords and Jedi versus Sith mythology stuff, this isn't going to be your episode, and that's fine. That's fair. That's your prerogative. But I encourage people, even if you think you don't need to see a story about a mother and a daughter doing a race at a training at a flight academy hosted by Wedge Antilles himself, you're wrong. It's a good episode. I really encourage you to check this one out. Don't overlook it. Again, Wallace and Gromit, Chicken Run. These are great things. Chicken Run's awesome. That's a great flick. So check it out. I encourage you. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just a lot of fun. It's sweet and loving and amazing. And again, Star Wars, sometimes Star Wars gets it doesn't get the credit it deserves for having some heart to it. But this is one of those episodes. This is one of those installments that remind you there is heart in Star Wars. So yeah, I highly encourage you to check this one. I give this like a solid 8 buckets. I really, really like this episode a lot. Again, it's just a fun one. It's fun, and I know I gave the other episodes, a lot of the earlier installments in Visions Volume 2, 9s, and you know what? Maybe I'm being stingy. I'm gonna give it a 9. 9 buckets. I talked myself into it. 9 buckets. It's just a different flavor, but it's still awesome. Check it out.
You expect me to search the galaxy for the home of this creature and deliver it to a race of enemy sorcerers?
This is the way.
Next up, we have Episode 5, which is Journey to the Dark Head. Original air date, again, May 4th, 2023. This is from Studio Mir in South Korea. And again, another studio where the animation looked familiar, so when I did a little digging, I was like, oh, wait, I did just watch that. They just did the Batman, Superman, Super Sons animated film that you can check out. I think it's on HBO Max. I think that's where I watched it. And again, very fun, dynamic, sort of anime influenced art style. And yeah, like I said, you might be a little bit familiar with some of their work. So it's really cool stuff. It's written and directed by Hyung Gwen Park. I hope I said your name correctly. Our plot for this installment: a hopeful mechanic and disillusioned young Jedi team up for a risky and unlikely quest to turn the tide of the galactic war, but dark forces tail them. And yeah, that's actually very astute. Our primary cast for this installment: Ashley Park, Eugene Lee Yang, Daniel Day Kim, Albert Kong, Greg Chun, Joella Landry, Judy Alice Lee. And as different as the I'm Your Mother episode was, this is another 180 degrees back to maybe the more accepted version of Star Wars for some people. Again, if you have that sort of narrow, tightly focused Jedi versus Sith mythology stuff, galactic conflict, if that's your Star Wars cup of tea, this is an episode that I think is geared for you. It is very much that. It is prophecy. It is lightsabers. It is Sith and Jedi. There's a Jedi Council. There's all kinds of stuff in here. Like, this episode is just layered with familiarity of Star Wars things. And again, it's true to that Vision's name, right? Like, it's not trying to sneak into a story into continuity. It's just classic Jedi versus Sith. You have some mythology. You have some prophecy. You have elements of I would think, so there's some influence of the South Korean culture in this as well, because there is a uniqueness to it. There is a stylistic uniqueness to it that I think is the influence of the culture. And again, that is sort of like the charm of this particular installment of Visions, is the way that each of these studios are taking their societal influences and their cultures and kind of infusing it and giving Star Wars a little bit more of a unique flavor with each episode in this series. And I think we get a little bit of that in this episode. It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty fun. This is a good one. It's Jedi, Sith. There's good action. The animation's intense. It's very fluid. It's very kinetic. There's a lot of energy on the screen in this one. It looks great. It's beautifully rendered. The voice talent is pretty darn fantastic. And again, it's very pure Star Wars. So I think if you overlook this one, you're making a big mistake. I don't know what else to say about it. It's just a really solid, really entertaining episode. And again, this one flies by really, really quickly. It's one of the longer runs, I think. I think this one's closer to 20 minutes. But it's so dense and action-packed that it flies. It really moves quickly. There's a lot going on, a lot of things happening. Flashbacks kind of, giving us a little bit more of the context of the history. This great galactic war they're talking about. I don't think they ever actually say like empire though. And we just know that the galaxy is at war. Welcome to Star Wars, right? That's what we do here. So a really just solid Star Wars entertainment in this episode. I don't really know. Again, I already said I don't know what to say. I still don't know what to say. It's just Star Wars distilled down to like its essence, and I think they really nailed it with this one. I think it's a really enjoyable, fun episode, and maybe this one may be my favorite of the season so far. We may have a new number one, but I'm not certain about that just yet. We haven't finished the show. We'll have to wrap that up next time. All right, we'll get to which one was my favorite next time. But yeah, really good installment. Get to it. Don't mess around. This is fun Star Wars. And not fun in the way like the I Am Your Mother was fun. Like, ooh, this is a action-packed journey of Jedi versus Sith and all that comes with that. So check it out. Good stuff here.
Just did the castle run in 12 parsecs. Not if you round down, buddy. Yeah.
And our third installment for this episode, which is actually episode 6 for Star Wars Visions Volume 2, is The Spy Dancer. Original air date May 4th, 2023. This is from Studio La Cachette, because they're in France, so I'm saying maybe it's Cachet. Or my French is just terrible. You guys let me know. Now, this is another studio that I sort of looked at and I was like, that looks familiar. And I had to do a little bit of a Google search on this. And this is the same studio that Genndy Tartakovsky is using for his Primal series. So I think that's why a little bit of the flavor is there that I recognize from that little piece of animation. And I've not watched all of Primal. I've not watched. I've only watched a handful of the episodes, and I do like it. I do just generally enjoy Tartakovsky's work to begin with, and he has his connections to Star Wars too. So that's always exciting. So it'd be fun to have Tartakovsky to come back and do something, wouldn't it? But I don't know. Maybe that relationship's soured since Disney's acquisition. I'm not 100% certain on that. Our plot for this episode: the premier dancer at a famous Imperial frequented cabaret uses her unique skill set to spy for the rebellion, but the presence of a mysterious officer threatens to derail her mission. Our voice cast for this episode: Camille Cotton, Lambert Wilson, Casey Chase, Rudy James, Jeff Cott. Those are our main players for this one. It's written and directed by Julian Shishing. I hope I said that name correctly. They're really testing me on these ones. This one is kind of classic old school hand-drawn animation. And that may or may not work for you nowadays. I think a lot of our minds have kind of gotten used to like the more modern animation techniques. This is kind of like the classic old school stuff, though. So, like, if you're in my age bracket, I think maybe you'll appreciate this a little bit more than maybe somebody younger than us. But it's beautiful. It's flowing, is probably the best word I can describe it with. It's just this flowing animation style, flowing story, and the characters. Everything about this episode is flow. An interesting little piece of trivia for you. So you'll notice the sort of uniqueness of the way that the characters are rendered, particularly the Imperial characters, the stormtroopers, the way they're rendered. It's familiar, yet it's different. There's sort of like this chunky look going on with them that I kind of dig, and I had a lot of respect for. But if you also noticed, when the troopers first roll up, that's like the design of the old MTV-7 multi-terrain vehicle, which was like one of the first things Kenner did as an add-on toy to expand their Star Wars line. Like, it was never in the first film, wasn't in Empire Strikes Back. It was one of those things they just added out, right? Like they tried to build more Star Wars toys for the kids. So I remember having that toy, or at least maybe not us having it, but a neighbor having it and playing with it, because it would go up and down, and you could do all these things with it. It was pretty wild, pretty fun. So kind of a fun flashback to see that rendered in the animation here. As far as the story goes, again, I think it's very heavily like French influenced, right? We have this story of this dancer in a cabaret house who has the ear of the Imperial officers in her club, and spies for the rebellion. It has so many notes of World War II occupied France versus the Nazis that it's not subtle, I guess, is the way I wanted to just sort of say it, but it's kind of a fun twist on that period of French history, of Parisian history in particular. The way the Nazis occupied France and sort of made it like their kind of playground, right? And we don't go into like the notion of collaborators or any of that stuff. That was a very real element of World War II Paris. But with that in mind, we have sort of like that cultural significance to France. The studio who produced this piece of animation is from France, but it also strikes a very familiar tone to Andor, something that we saw in Andor, and the lengths that people have to go to do things to rebel, the way that the lengths that people have to go to subvert the tyranny of the Empire. So it strikes a lot of familiar tones on a historical perspective for us in real life, but also it connects very nicely to a lot of the other elements of Star Wars that we've been exploring recently with shows like Andor. So I really did enjoy that element of it. I thought it was very fun in that sense that we sort of had like these real world connections. We're connecting to mythology in a sense because we're bringing that similar tone. There was one point where I sort of wondered if this episode of the series might go in a very different direction from what it went to. Now, what we find out is like this dancer. One of the reasons why she's spying for the rebellion is we find out the Empire took her child, this Imperial officer who has sort of like haunted her memories, her dreams, her life, steals her child when the Empire first comes to their planet, to their town, and takes her child away. what we ultimately find out is that child has been raised by the Empire since its theft from its mother, and is now the Imperial officer in charge of this area, of this place, of this town, of this city, of this planet. Not quite sure. The context is a little vague. And it alters the trajectory of the story. Like in a lot of senses, this episode sort of like feels like it should be part of a series. It sets up a lot of things that maybe will pan out, maybe won't. It'll be interesting to see if there's ever a follow-up in another installment of Visions, if there are to be more, or if it were to get like some little spin-off of its own. But so that's the direction it went in. But the direction I thought it might go in, because this cabaret dancer is so popular and so alluring to all these Imperial troopers and officers, that I thought it might go in the direction of Inglourious Bastards, where this dancer would lure in all the Imperials and then blow up the cabaret club. I guess that might have been a little too intense for an animation series that is, probably kind of get some young audience members looking at it. So maybe blowing up a cabaret club full of Imperials would be a little much as far as like graphic intensity goes. But I like the direction they went in. They surprised me. They sort of had like a little bit of a plot twist there with the revelation that the officer that she's trying to kill isn't the one she thinks it is, but it's actually like her grown son. So that was a nice little twist there, and it saved it from turning it into a Tarantino flick. But really neat dynamic animation. There's a lot of just really just evocative imagery in this one. Like I said, flowing is the word I use to describe this one a lot, and I think when you watch this one, you'll see exactly what I mean with the flow. The way it has like a very I don't know that reference well enough to use it, so I'm not going to. But if just stick with flow. Flow. Keep that word in your mind as you watch this one, because that's what it does. It flows. It flows, and it flows, and it's quite enjoyable. I forgot to rank our previous episode. So I give that one 8 buckets. I give this 8 buckets as well. So 2 really solid entries. Don't let that diminish what I'm saying. The other ones seem to be getting 9s, but the 8s are solid too. I was actually very surprised by the 3 episodes in this chunk, because they are different in a lot of senses. They're very unique. I like the way so far that these episodes are kind of getting mixed around. I don't know what they use to determine the order of which we're viewing them, but I like the order that they're playing out, because they cleanse the palette very well between episodes, right? Like you get a very unique style with Studio Aardman. You get a very unique style with Studio Mir. And you get another very unique style when you switch to this episode and you go to Studio La Cachée, because each one, again, I will mention again, the sort of cultural infusion that they're bringing to it, specifically in The Spy Dancer, is very important and much more noticeable in this installment of Visions than it was in the previous one. So I think that's been a real highlight of the series so far. So when you're watching, you kind of keep those things in mind. Like I said, I don't think they're subtle, but they're interesting to note, and then you contextualize it with Star Wars in your own way, in your own fashion. And I think it helps kind of deepen our enjoyment of all of it. So yeah, like 3 really great installments in this block of episodes, 4, 5, and 6. I can't say I've found a dog in the bunch, or maybe turd in the bunch is a better expression. I love dogs. So I don't want to make it sound like dogs are bad. I love dogs. No. There's been 0 turds in the punch bowl so far, in my humble opinion, and we still have three more to go. And we will hopefully have those watched and reviewed with you guys very, very soon. So thank you for tuning in to another installment of our continuing coverage of May the 4th and Star Wars Visions Volume 2, celebrating Return of the Jedi all month long. And we're so glad you're here. This is the Mandovision Podcast. My name is Tom, Nargai Tom, and your continued support of small independent Star Wars podcasts it just touches me in the heart every time I hear or see from somebody on social media that is enjoying the show. So thank you very, very much. Please reach out to us on social media at Mando_Vision on Twitter and Instagram. You can email the show, mandovisiontom@gmail.com. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this show with all the Mandalorians in your covert. A great way to support podcasts, and this one in particular, if the format you listen to allows 5-star reviews, hey, give us a 5-star review. That'd be so insanely helpful to small independent shows like us. We really need that help. Make sure that we don't get shut out of the algorithm. Make sure that we're getting into feeds for other people who are watching Star Wars podcasts. So truly appreciate you all who take the time to do that. So thank you very, very much. All right, we'll be back to close out our coverage of Star Wars Visions Volume 2 in the very near future. My guess would be Tuesday of next week, but it could be sooner. We'll just have to wait and see how it goes. All right, members of Buckethead Nation, thank you so much for your continued support. You are all the best out there. I wouldn't be here doing this without your support. And we'll be back very, very soon. Remember, this podcast can only end one way. This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.